Have you heard of clankers, this Gen Z term?
No.
Clankers is like the Gen Z term for like the AI robots that are trying to get into everyone's business. It's a pejorative term, exactly. So it's the AI software. So it's like, rebelling against the clankers who are trying to get in the middle of all your business. Um, and I think it's pretty awesome. So slop and clankers, right?
I just looked it up and I see it originated from Star Wars. I mean, apparently it came from a video game, which is probably why I don't know it, but I was like, how did something originate from Star Wars and I don't know what it is? Like, I'm a Star Wars nerd. I have a Lego Millennium Falcon over here, like a 1,000 piece thing that I need to put together. I think I have a Boba Fett behind me or something. Yeah.
How long is it going to take you to put together that Star Wars thing?
Well, so far it's taken me 8 months
That's
because I got
incredible.
it for Christmas and it's still sitting in the box on the floor. But I've had a baby in the house for 15 months, so I think that partially justifies why it's not getting touched.
Yeah, that's a little more of an involved project, the baby project.
Welcome to AI for Advisors with Mark Heinen and James Cantwell. Every week, Mark and James break down the latest in the world of wealth tech and AI, and occasionally bring in guests to spice things up. This is not investment advice and not professionally produced. I am not real and not yet sentient. Now let's get on with the show.
So, James, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How you doing today, Mark?
Doing great, doing great. Excited about getting back into the fall, and a lot of stuff is happening on our side. And I'm also excited that we have, you know, prepped a pretty amazing show. Generally, we're trying to do themes, and generally the theme for today is AI working or is it not working? And so I think it's going to be cool to talk about because I think, I don't know about your personal experience. My personal experience is I use it a lot. I hear about people using it a lot, but people are wondering where it's going to go and what the fundamental impact is going to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I mean, like I think we can dive right in because we showed a stat on the last episode or a study from MIT about them saying how AI was not really bringing efficiency to the marketplace and it was overhyped. So why don't we give an update on that
Yeah.
particular article?
So let's give an update. And yeah, let's do it like in our segment, the best of LinkedIn segment, which is one of my favorite segment, considering it's only our main segment. So it's probably has to be my favorite segment.
I
And so
think
I'm going to
so.
see if I can, I'm going to see if I can share.
It's the same way I have a favorite child.
Exactly. We talked last week about the MIT study saying 95% of projects were failing because we came out with that. The market lost a significant amount of value. People were really tuning into our podcast. But no, in actual fact, we did actually see a lot of negative sentiment last week around AI and AI adoption. And it turns out MIT actually pulled the study. I don't think it was ever actually released. And there was a clarification. So my best of LinkedIn is this gentleman, Yuri Quintana, who is a PhD chief of division of clinical informatics at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and Harvard Medical School. And so he talks generally about these headlines and how they can have such a big effect. And so specifically, we're talking here, a news article reports on MIT's initiative, which recently released the Gen AI Divide, State of AI in Business 2025, revealing sobering findings about generative AI implementation in enterprise settings. The news article says that the report claims that while a small percentage of organizations, particularly nimble startups, are achieving success with AI, some jumping from 0 to 20 million in revenue within a year, 95% of corporate AI pilots are failing to deliver measurable business value. I think profitability was actually the measure they were using. The author's
Hmm.
claims are based on 150 leadership interviews, 350 employee surveys, and an analysis of 300 public AI deployments. However, the report does not seem to be public viewable, does not seem to have been peer reviewed. More specifically, and maybe I can go to my perplexity, I'll go to my perplexity summary here of the Boston Globe article because I don't subscribe to the Boston Globe. I'm sorry to all journalists out there. So generally, the specific thing that's happening here is that only 20% of companies actually tried the custom projects. And among the people that tried, 19% of them saw failure. So 80% of the firms did not attempt the projects at all. So I think that's a really significant difference. It's a very different story. I think the high level is that a lot of the business people looking at this are basically saying I'm not ready to adopt. I'm not ready to try this thing. I think ultimately the other thing that came out of this that I was noticing is that the vertical AI implementations had a much higher success rate. So a lot of the custom tools were actually doing very well, which I thought was interesting from our perspective.
I think that's so. A couple of things in that article caught my attention. One is their focus on ROI because it's a matter of like, well, how are you measuring it? Right? Like what are they actually using? And to your point, if they're not, they're really just focused on the market as a whole or 150 firms across a number of different verticals, that's not going to be as effective because AI is definitely more heavily used and there are more industry specific or vertical specific solutions in certain sectors that are really getting a lot of adoption. And so I think it's better to focus more on like those sectors that are adopting AI and using it versus just a general study of AI where who knows how effective they are at using technology in general and then implementing something new and cutting edge.
That's
I
right.
think it's normal. It's kind of expected to see that.
I mean, there can be all sorts of Fortune 500 companies who have no business trying to use AI for their business because they do something very specific. John Deere with their design plans. Who knows if that's a good use of AI? I'd want my tractor to be running very well if I was in that industry.
Well, yeah, and it's like, are they also trying to apply general like large language models when they should be using more specific and focused models that are working together to perform specific tasks, right? That are one more efficient, smaller, better at their job. So, kind of glad to see it went away because it didn't resonate with me
Totally
when
agree.
we read it last week.
So what have you got?
So let me share my screen. I got my buddy over here, John Swiston.
Shout out to John, friend of the show.
Yeah. So John here, if you don't know John, he is a fantastic marketer, video production expert. He does a lot of the big conferences and he's just an all around like fun guy. Quick side story, like the first time he messaged me, he sent me one of those like I think it was over like Christmas time and he sent me one of those like Loom videos and was wearing like a Christmas hat and stuff at it. And that was just like our very first connection ever. So I obviously reciprocated with something similar. But
I
it's
love
just
how he got to start with snowboarding as a snowboarder, doing PR for the dawn of snowboarding in the Olympics. That's just such an awesome story.
He's got great stories. So fun guy. If you're going to Future Proof, him and his team will be there. Check them out. Go say hello. But he always posts these great videos. We're not going to play the video. It's like 4 minutes long, but he always posts these great thoughtful videos and there's always a really solid point to them. And so I really love this one. It's a little lengthy, so stick with me here. But here's the thing. I read the most disappointing thing this week. Amongst senior advisors surveyed, adopting additional technology applications was actually negatively correlated with well-being, right? So I'm going to cherry pick here. Hiring human support consistently reduces administrative hours and improving well-being. Unsupported solo advisors generate $182,000 in revenue. Supported solos with 1 to 2 hires generate $500,000. So big difference by adding some humans to the team. Advisors who invest in tech that enhances client experience, not just efficiency, tend to see stronger revenue productivity. Well-being improves with each incremental support hire, from 8.6% of hours on admin with no staff to 5.9% with 2 support roles. At face value, the story seems simple. Don't rely on tech, just hire people. But here's the problem with wealth management. Research often frames things in binary terms, as if advisors have to choose between adopting technology or hiring people. Of course, the advisors who hired staff are using technology too. The real story is that humans and technology working together create multiplicative results. That things aren't so simple as choosing one digital marketing tactic or another. And he goes on, the default solution has been to cobble together 10 to 15 point tools, pipe the data into a lake, and attempt to stitch meaning together through BI overlays and novel interfaces. Meanwhile, enterprise and advisors alike are stuck in the middle, managing archiving requirements and compliance, watching their Frankenstack get patchier and more painful. wondering why innovation feels like more work. It's no wonder well-being suffers. Kitches is right. Technology should be applied to enhance client value, not just to chase efficiency. But if we zoom out, the paradigm itself is broken. We don't just need more tools or tighter integrations. We need a rebuild from the kernel to the cloud, the database to the front end. I'll stop there. I think you have a
Yeah,
reaction.
I think a lot of the messaging from tech, especially in wealth tech, is save time, right? Save 10 to 15 hours.
Sure.
We're definitely guilty of some of that messaging as well. I definitely take the point you made last week, which is it's actually more about impact than saving time. How can you dramatically increase impact? And, that's saving time. Sort of the knock on is that you don't need to hire as many staff. And I think his point is actually it's more fulfilling to have a core team that's working well together. And if you have a core team that's working well together and they're well trained on technology, on using AI, they can be really impactful. I think that makes a lot of sense. That really resonates with me.
Same. What he says in the video that I don't know if it comes across quite as much, although he gets into it here at the end. We need a rebuild from the kernel to the cloud, from the database to the front end, a system where people and technology actually work together seamlessly to deliver value. I think that's what really resonated with me. In the video, he goes on to talk about how historically startups and other technology providers have really focused on building these point solutions, right? Like get good at one thing first and then go from there. And I hope I'm not misquoting you, John, but he goes on to essentially say that like he thinks it's time for that shift, right? That building that way is actually what's leading us to these problems and that we should be thinking differently. So I know I commented on his post, so I'll use my own words so I'm not misinterpreting his, but I basically said I'm totally with you. I think with the addition of AI, the ability to now research, plan, design, build, iterate, and rebuild, right?
When you say
Right.
build, do you mean someone vibe coding their own tool, or do you think using an AI assistant that goes across tools? What are you talking about there?
I will just say AI enhanced. It doesn't matter whether you're vibe coding or you're a properly trained back, front, or full stack developer using AI. The point is the research that you can do, the thinking that you can do, the assistance with validating calculations, using real world data, testing things without actually having to build it yourself, right? Like I'm building some stuff and I validate a lot of the calculations that I think I want to use. I bring in real data. I try and find edge cases and I run them through a lot of different AIs to analyze and see what holds up about my analysis and what falls flat. And I haven't coded anything yet, right? This is all the design phase. And if it begins to work, then I go, great, here's something that works for 80%. Then I figure out how can I modify it for the edge cases. I'm not coding. I'm just living in an AI tool, going back and forth, feeding data. And that's not something you could have easily done in the past. You had to kind of build something to do the calculations, possibly even an MVP, or you're doing something in spreadsheets and some sort of analysis. And it takes a really long time. In a few hours to a day, I can do just a massive amount of research and iteration. And I start with something simple in the morning. In the evening, I have a hyper complex, very nuanced, really useful insight or calculation for something. And I think this is new. And kind of getting back to the point, I think it means you can plan to build a much broader, bigger solution. You just don't have to roll out all the features on day one. You don't have to have the UI built on day one for everything. You can focus on the core things, but plan for it from day one so that as you roll these things out, they weren't add-ons. They were part of the original plan and design. And maybe you did some of the pre-work, but everything was factored into your design process today.
Yeah, and so do you think that means that the applications rolling out in the future will be doing more, covering more surface area than they have in the past, where they've been point solutions?
I mean, I think they absolutely are already. I mean, like, so I'll give a shout out to a firm I haven't even actually met yet, but I'm chatting next week at Future Proof with some of the founders, or one of the co-founders from Slant.app, which is a relatively new AI first CRM. And I'm calling them a CRM, but if you look at their website and what they're doing, their workflow, CRM, lead gen, a whole host of different things all in this platform. And I think that's really more where we're going. We're used to a CRM really being that client customer relationship management platform. And now it can become more of a workhorse. Really, you don't necessarily need a separate marketing CRM. You don't need a separate note taker. You don't need these separate things. And this isn't a firm that's been around for 10 years and has like been adding these things on. Like Wealthbox has been around a really long time and they're just adding a note taker. Well, at the same time, a firm that probably started less than a year ago has that and more. Right now, I'm not saying one's better than the other. I have no idea how good or bad
Yeah,
this
will
product
our
is.
SaaS diet then basically collapse into 5 different tools? Will the Kitsys wealth map collapse into 5 different tools?
I don't think it'll collapse. I think it's going to. I think we're going to have a period of more and more before we get a contraction, right?
Right.
I mean, you could look at it like almost anything else we experience in the markets, right? You could look at it like the period of growth, and granted, we all know the reason why, but the period of growth with the real estate prior to 2008, 2007, right? There was all this growth, all this expansion, lots of loans went out that shouldn't have, right? Lots of risk, etc. But the thing is, the amount of homes being built was in excess of the demand, and eventually everything fell down with many other reasons. Not It wasn't just supply and demand, right? There
Right.
were some other factors at play. Everything fell down and contracted. There was years, at least in Phoenix, it seemed like it was almost a decade before like new home building started again. Right. So we had this explosion of building homes followed by this significant contraction and then back to a period of normalcy. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing now. We're seeing this explosion of everybody building their own thing. I don't think it's sustainable. So no, we're not going to go to 5. That's not my take, but I think it's going to, Wealth Tech Select and the Kits's map are going to only include more for the near future. And
Yeah, well,
contraction
speaking
is
of
a little
speaking
bit
of
down
that
the
kind
road.
of contraction, I actually think it's interesting to see what's happening in healthcare. I think there's some analogies between healthcare and finance in general. You have obviously some big players, the big health systems. You have small independent physicians, and they obviously have regulations they need to abide by, but also are in high stakes, client intensive roles. And AI scribes have been propagating, but Epic just announced that they are going to be partnering with Microsoft Copilot to roll out an AI scribe built into the Epic system. For those who don't know, Epic is the primary EHR system. It was accelerated by some legislation that came out in 2009, and is really a fixture across most of healthcare. And there are actually more scribes out there than there are AI note takers in the wealth tech space. There are. I think I recently saw a study showing 160 dedicated scribes for healthcare, and it's really fascinating to think what's going to happen now with a note taker being embedded into the system that most physicians and health systems have to use by default. This is like the thing they are required to use to make sure they get paid, etc. And there are some well-funded players like Bridge in this space. They're talking about having to now pitch out to high-end independent physicians' offices that are somehow not affiliated with Epic. So yeah, it makes me wonder what's going to happen with Copilot in the space in the finance space. The things we've seen from Copilot so far do not seem very promising, to be completely honest. I was reading what they're going to launch in what they call Microsoft 365 Release Wave 2. A very sexy name. They're so good at naming over at Microsoft. And, the agents that they are going to be releasing in finance is a finance reconciliation agent, a variance analysis agent, and a collections agent for accounts receivable. So, not that relevant for wealth tech. So it
No.
feels like they're not really digging into this. But that said, I imagine over time, I saw a demo of some agents at a previous show. I forget which one it was. It seemed like a Figma demo, but this one was effectively, I think that was T3, that Microsoft gave a demo at T3, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just feel, I don't know, probably not going to happen in this year, but maybe if it happens next year, I actually wonder what's going to happen to the whole landscape.
Yeah. So I actually have a different question. Something came up as you were mentioning this. So you had said that this system is used by, and I don't know if this was the exact word, the majority, but a large number of physicians, and more or less they're going to be forced to use this system. I'm very curious what that's going to mean, especially if this carries over to any other industries. I realize healthcare and finance are kind of a little more regulated and nuanced. But what will this mean for AI adoption overall and this sort of thing if note-taker scribes are more or less mandated in highly regulated industries? I imagine it's going to force people to just get very comfortable with it very quickly.
I think culturally that's already happening. I went into One Medical recently and they asked me when I checked in whether I'd be comfortable with having the scribe on. And that's using the AWS scribe. I, of course, asked a lot of questions. But, that was phenomenal to see that happening. So culturally, I think that's definitely happening. I think
So did you
Google,
say yes or no?
I absolutely said yes.
Did
And
you?
I
Okay.
know I know my HIPAA rights. I'm going to request the transcript, right? Um, so I think, I mean, Google is bundling the Gemini note taking into Google Workspace. So I think that's interesting to see that happening. It's not a far stretch for Copilot just automatically to be on, bundled into your Outlook, bundled into your calendar. Every time you have a calendar event, it just happens. Every time you have Teams, it just happens, right? And, I think in that vein, I feel there are these other big projects happening. JP Morgan actually uh, has had shared this spring some information about their AI tool, where they custom built this thing called Coach AI, which they claimed helped their advisors find information 95% faster, according to Mike Orichuli, their chief information officer. And so they claim it's really great for wealth management. I think those are custom built things. This is really the fundamental question is how much will be custom built, how much will be off the shelf, and how much will just be bundled in with Microsoft
Mm,
and Google and the tools that people are using.
yeah. I think that, I mean, like what JP Morgan is doing, I think is it's a good use case, right? They're looking to figure out how to get information faster to better serve their clientele, right? And so reading through some of the article, it's, they're really looking to use these tools to help with, their wealthy clients, the questions that they're asking, get them answers faster than they could in the past. I think that's a good use case. I mean, an extension of this, which I'm sure they're already working on, and other platforms in our space are doing, are those things that are looking to be a little bit more predictive, or maybe the right thing that I should be thinking about is something that's already monitoring market conditions, things like that, and letting you be more proactive instead of reactive. I think is kind of the next wave, right? Right now we're trying to focus on like how do I save time by like getting notes and information faster. But next we should really focus on how do we provide a better experience by anticipating, right, what's going to be needed and delivering that in advance.
Well, if you don't work for JP Morgan and don't have access to Coach AI, you do have access to Google Finance. And they just launched this week, I believe, or last week, a new AI enabled experience where you can basically do natural language searches across financial data and see real time financial data in that context. So I thought that was really interesting. I'm curious if advisors are going to use it.
My gut is not unless they're already using Google Finance, it's not going to bring a new audience. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a enhancement to those who are already getting some news and information and market summary data from Google Finance, but no, I don't think it's really going to help them. Um, it's just the way a platform. I don't know if I should call it a platform or a website, but it's just a way something like that should evolve, right? It should make better use of the technology so that people can get the information that they want more tailored to them. So I did play around with it. I'm not going to bring it up on the screen. I know we're almost at the end of our podcast time here, but I liked it because it has a lot of financial data all around the screen, right? You can see current market, you can have your watch list, different things, while you can interact with this and ask questions about different stocks, the market, etc. And the visualizations that it creates are interactive and make sense for this type of information, right? So it's very focused on financial information. So the visualizations and the way it responds and gives you output is great because it doesn't have to think about every scenario. It's not showing you how to replace your toilet and has to create visuals for that. It's focused on financial data, right? So it's
Yeah.
good with tables, charts, graphs, etc. And it does a really great job. I liked it. I think it's cool. Will I use it? I don't know. I bookmarked it, so I'll try it the next few days and see if it catches my attention. But
Yeah. I
I
think
don't think advisors are going to use it. No.
I mean, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley all developed their proprietary chatbots to analyze financial data. I think it just begs the question of what the independent RIAs and the other broker dealers are going to use to compete with them. And they're claiming, JP Morgan's claiming they're going to boost their client roster by 50% in the next 3 to 5 years. I imagine that's cutting into a lot of the existing advisors' client base. So that it'd be really interesting to see how that works. Well, I know you actually have real work to do. So I suggest we call it there, but great episode.
Perfect.
So thank you very much.
Always enjoy the conversation, Mark. Looking forward to episode 4.
Absolutely. And reach out if you are interested in participating. We do have some guests lined up. We're not going to announce them at this point, but I think in the coming weeks, we are going to have some other voices on the podcast, which is going to be great.
That'll be good because, like we said, there's only so long that people can listen to the two of us. So
absolutely,
hearing some other voices will be great.
For the two of you still listening, thank you very much. All right. Have a good week.
Bye, all.